Possible opposing viewpoints will be considered by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu or by mail at WHPC One Education Drive, Garden City, New York 11530. Thanks for listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by Triborough Pharmacy. Hi, I'm Barry Newman, the pharmacist at Triborough Pharmacy, which is a full-service pharmacy offering a full line of prescription drugs and over-the-counter products, notary public, and the DMV vision exam. We accept most insurance plans. Located at 3720 Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria, Queens, just blocks from the Ditmars Boulevard train station. Open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. More information is available at 718-777-7033. Ask for Barry or Joe at Triborough.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by CarStar Celebrity Chase Collision, with 2 locations in Limerick and Oceanside, who remind you that New York state law says you always have the right to choose which shop will fix your car. CarStar Celebrity Chase Collision offers a full range of services, 24-hour towing between Montauk and Manhattan, shuttle service, and they can help you with a rental car arrangement if needed. All repairs include the CarStar Lifetime Nationwide Warranty, ensuring that the experts at Celebrity Chase Collision are always on your side.
Y sí, hablamos español.
More information is available at 516-593-0920 or online at celebritychasecollision.com.
You're listening to the best of the best. WHPC nominated for the 2024 Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Award for Best Community College Station in the nation for the 6th year in a row.
Voice of Nassau Community College.
This is the award-winning 90.3 WHPC HD Garden City.
Listen on your smart speaker.
Play WHPC.
And available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeart, and on the WHPC app.
90.3 WHPC.
Hi everyone, this is Jewish Talk coming to you from Nassau Community College on 90.3 WHPC. Also streaming on nccradio.org. This program is later archived on Spreaker.com and on WHPC's great site. This program is repeated on Sunday evenings at 11 p.m. So hi there. My name is Rabbi Perl. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And of course, this all depends on when you are listening or watching. Gewalt! You can see us right now on Facebook Live at WHBC or on my own page, facebook.com, Anshel Pearl. Boker Tov to everybody out there. So hello on the radio, hello online, and hello to the world. First, you won't believe this. I would like to greet everybody this morning with the word Good Yom Tov. What on earth am I talking about? What's Good Yom Tov? Yom Tov is usually reserved for a special date, a special event, a special holiday. Well, indeed, today on the Jewish calendar, Teves 5, Hey Teves, the 5th day of this month of Teves, is today celebrated as a day of great rejoicing in the Chabad Lubavitch community. I take you back to the year 1987, when a U.S. federal court issued a decision in favor of Agudas Hasidei Chabad. This is the central Chabad organization, and this was a case that regarding the ownership of the priceless library of the 6th Rebbe of Lubavitch, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. It had been contested in court whether this library belonged to him as an individual, or did it belong to the organization, to the community of Chabad? And the ruling was based on the idea that a Rebbe is not a private individual, but a communal figure synonymous with the body of Hasidism, and therefore everything belonged to the general body of Chabad. The Rebbe, the Lubavitch Rebbe, we're talking about Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the son-in-law of the previous Rebbe, urged that this occasion, that means today, the Hey Teves, should be marked because it was a discussion and a question over books. Today is a time to devote ourselves more intensely to the study of Torah books, of Sfarim, to buy new books, and to make a general commitment to be learning more and to be more in tune with our mitzvah of studying Torah in its fullest sense. So therefore, I want to wish everybody this good Yontif and remind everyone and urge everyone to expand on your Jewish books, buy some Jewish books. Certainly online, it's very easy to do that. And also to help support local Jewish libraries. They should be able to have more books, and the power of study, the study of Torah, is so immense. I'd like to say good morning this morning to Eitan Kelshevsky, which also includes Golan, Matan, and Zev. Good morning to Linda Zellickson and to everybody out there listening today. At this moment, my friends, I must let you know that today's program is dedicated to one of this program's most avid listeners, but a person who I knew, and a husband as well. We talk about Sybele Trigoboff, Sybele and Harold Trigoboff. Harold passed away several years ago. His dear wife, Sybele Trigoboff, passed away this past week and was laid to rest on Friday, late Friday morning. Sybele Trigoboff, Tzivya Bas Zelig. It was a very, very special, meaningful, and sad time as we all gathered at the cemetery out on Long Island, Beth Moses. Family, friends, people came in from all over, the children, the grandchildren, the extended family, members of the congregation, and people who are impressed and impacted by the life of dear Sybele, Tzivya Bas Zelig. And therefore today, I'm dedicating our program to her life and what she represents and what she continues to represent, not only to her family, but really to the world. And I don't say this with some, just saying things for the sake of saying things, but really Sybele's life has an impact on us in a very, very important way. Let me give you a little bit of a background. All of us have our different vocations and professions in life. A teacher, a doctor, an engineer, a scientist, a business person. And all of us have our different works, and we do it to make a living and whatever it may be doing. But I would say that like a doctor whose very life expresses a purpose, helping people, it's very hard for a regular person to be able to say, whatever I'm doing, I got a job, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But then there are those whose very life, every single day, every single moment, expressed a meaningful impact on this world. Sybele Trigoboff, Tzivya Bas Zelig, was an artist. An artist. The Rebbe says in the letter, the point is that those who have been divinely gifted in art, whether sculpture or painting and the like, have the privilege of being able to convert an inanimate thing such as a brush, paint, and canvas, or wood and stone into a living form. In a deeper sense, it is the ability of an artist to transform a certain extent the material into a spiritual, even where the creation is in still life, and certainly where the artistic work has to do with living creatures and humans. How much more so if the art medium is used to advance ideas, especially reflecting Torah and mitzvahs, which would raise the artistic skill to its highest level. Sybele, in her many, many years as an artist, taught so many people this very concept, to transform material into spiritual. But there's one amongst many, one special, you could say, attribute, accomplishment that she has, in that she designed the menorah. There are many, renditions of a menorah. But Sybele was able to capture the Rebbe's wish that menorahs should have branches that come out diagonally, not rounded. And there's a reason for that, a very important reason for that. But she was able to capture that vision and that through art, and physically actually designed a menorah in a very beautiful way, where if you looked in the center, the way it was designed, you could actually see the tallest building in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue. But this model was presented, the actual design was given to ourselves. We asked Sybele to help us design this. It was later given to the Art Strauss sign company. This was a very well-known Jewish company, very known to all of us because they were the ones who designed the New Year's ball originally when it was first made, the ball that falls down on New Year's Eve on 42nd Street. This company went about and designed it and built it. This menorah stood for so many years, every year, on Old Country Road in the Roosevelt Field area, in the Westbury border. Thousands of people would come. Later on, when that was developed, that area, we had it stand outside the JCC in East Hills. And for so many years, children, adults came, and each night we lit the menorah. It's 18 feet high and 18 feet wide. Later on, as life went on, the menorah now, we were blessed to be able to present it as a gift to the Chabad in Setauket, in the Stony Brook area, led by Rabbi Chaim Grossbaum. And there it stands beautifully in a very large area, and there stands all year round. This very design, made by Sybele with the help of Harold, was replicated and became the most favored menorah design on cars. If you go on for so many years, this menorah was attached, small replicas were made and graced cars throughout the world, throughout the United States. And many, many now have menorahs are exactly based on this design. So while many of us, perhaps you could say struggle a little bit about our work that we do, what the results are, what impact we have, besides just making money, Sybele was honored to be able to bring into this world something whose light continues forever and ever, the light of menorah. Dear Sybele passed away during the week of Hanukkah. She was laid to rest on Friday, which is the culmination of the entire week. And in a deeper sense, the culmination of the day the Almighty called her neshama, her great neshama, back, reflected the impact of bringing light to literally thousands and thousands of people. And all of us, our lives are that much better because of Sybele's impact on this world. At the funeral, in keeping with the Chabad custom, no eulogies were made. Basically, the person is laid to rest, prayers are made, a brief announcement is made, and I want to share with you what I was honored to be able to share. That the Baal Shem Tov tells us, what are you supposed to do at a funeral? And he said, you do three things. You cry, you have a moment of silence, and then you start to sing. And the student says, we understand why you would cry at a funeral. Nobody gets too old to be on this world. So we know it's a very sad moment, so we cry. We also know why we would have a moment of silence at a funeral. A moment of silence is a moment to stop, to respect the person, and most importantly, to understand that God is running the show. We have many questions we can ask of God, many good questions to ask of God, especially in the world that we live in today. But we've learned in our culture, shah still. Let's accept. Dayan emes. God is running the show. So we have this moment of silence, really an expression of acceptance of Hashem knows what he's doing. But how can you sing? How can you sing? The student said to the Baal Shem Tov. Are you supposed to sing at a funeral? And he said that every human being, whoever they may be, are brought into this world to create music. Create music. You don't have to be in a philharmonic orchestra. You don't have to play in a band. King David says, Kol haneshama tahalel ka halaluka. Every soul is here to bring praise to this world. All of us do it in our particular ways, but then there are those who are lucky. The praise just literally, is felt day and night. And clearly, the music that dear Sybele had brought to this world continues to play on in so many different ways through her children, her grandchildren, her great-grandchildren, to the immediate community who knew her. She was a gifted individual who loved to learn. She inspired my wife, soll sie sein gesund, reminded us that Sybele was the one who encouraged women's classes, participated, traveled. She combined a deep understanding of learning, appreciation of God, and expressed it in so many different ways, and particularly through the gift of an artist. The privilege of being able to convert an inanimate object such as a brush or a paint and canvas into something meaningful that made people think and to be inspired about themselves. So one lady came over to me at the funeral and said, Rabbi, you said the Baal Shem Tov says you're supposed to sing. So I had presented, a few thoughts in a metaphorical sense that we're all here, we all create music in our life. But she said, the Baal Shem Tov said we should sing. So, dear friends, we sang. What do you think we sang? We sang the song of Ani Mamin, I believe. We all believe in the coming of Mashiach. And even though it has tarried, is kind of behind schedule, nevertheless, we have never lost our faith. Mashiach will be here very speedily. This is how it sounded. Ani Mamin, Ani Mamin, Ani Mamin, Beyemuna Shelema, Bevias HaMoshiach, Bevias HaMoshiach, Ani Mamin. That's how we concluded the meaningful funeral gathering for dear Sybele Trigoboff. So at a moment like this today, our program is dedicated to her and dedicated to the life that she brought to this world. So with that in mind, I want to say hello, of course, to Jeannie Marie. I want to say hello to Jane. Let's see now. There's a lady listening from the Philippines. Wow, unbelievable. On our Facebook, you can put up a comment or a hello. And all the wonderful things being said to Zalman Stewart Wegg. Thank you so much, Zalman. So let's continue this dedication to dear Sybele. I want to share with you that I don't remember ever Sybele like taking a rest. She was always involved, teaching, learning herself. And I want to share with you how Torah thinks of life and how the world should think of us. Stories told of 3 turtles once stopped for a cup of coffee at a cafe. When it started to rain, the eldest asked the youngest to please go home and bring back his umbrella. The youngest agreed with one condition, that the eldest would not drink his coffee while he was away. The agreement was made, and the youngest one went off to retrieve the umbrella. The other 2 waited and waited. 2 weeks passed, then 2 months. The cafe closes and opens, closed again and opens again. Weekends and holidays come and go, and still the turtles sat there waiting. Finally, after 2 years, the older turtle of the 2 said, "No, well, I guess he's not coming back. I might as well drink his coffee." At that point, a tiny turtle voice was heard from behind the door. "If you drink, I won't go." Life is fleeting. Ketzel over. Life is like a passing shadow. When the sages of the Medrash read Ketzel over, these words, that life is like a passing shadow, they made a striking observation that describes our modern lives. The sages said that there are 3 types of shadows. For those of us who know old-time radio in America, what was that program? The Shadow Knows. So there are 3 types of shadows. To help us understand this, I will describe it in the following manner. Imagine the burning sun, and that you seek shelter from taking refuge in the shadow. There's one kind of shadow, it's called Ketzeloi Shel Oif, the shadow of a flying bird. The second kind of shadow is called Ketzeloi Shel Kosel, the shadow of a wall. And then we have a third kind of shadow called Ketzel Shel Dekel, the shadow of a fruit tree. In describing these 3 types of shadows, in truth, the sages are vividly describing 3 kinds of lives that people choose to lead. And from this, we can deduce which type of life offers us the best protection, whether it's to ourselves and to others equally. So bear with me, my friends, as I share with you what these 3 kinds of shadows represent, and for us to appreciate the unique impact of Sybele Trigoboff in the kind of life, in the kind of shadow, the kind of protection that she provides us. There are some whose lives can be compared to the shadow of a bird in flight. Now, so would you choose to seek your shelter behind the shadow of a flying bird? Will that provide you with what you require? Even though the bird's shadow blocks the sun, that shadow is always moving and therefore offers us no steady relief. It gives no shade, no comfort, no protection, no happiness. That kind of shade is absolutely of no use to anyone. It's too light to protect. You can never predict where it will be next, so you really cannot get behind it to seek any shelter, not even for a second. New York Times columnist, a good friend of Dr. Kilshevsky, David Brooks, wrote, there are 2 sets of virtues, the resume virtues and the eulogy virtues. The resume virtues are the skills you bring to the marketplace, the special capabilities you've acquired, trained for, worked towards, the ones that make your career path successful and make you good at whatever profession you have chosen. The eulogy virtues are the ones that will be talked about at a person's funeral. Whether you were brave, whether you were kind, whether you were honest, whether you were faithful, were you capable of deep love? They are the ones that we leave behind, known as one's legacy. So let me ask you, which type of virtue do you prize the most? The resume virtues or the eulogy virtues? What are we aspiring to in life? Well, we all know that the eulogy virtues, of course, are a great deal more important than the resume ones. As I often joke, that on the monument of a person, they don't write down the amount of money that the person made, what kind of car they drove, what kind of zip code they lived in. It's all about deep things in life. What's more important is written there. But despite this knowledge, think about life. Our culture and our educational system spends more time teaching the skills one needs for a career, of a career success, than the qualities needed for developing character. And sadly, we see the state of education today, and the problems that the world faces is that very thought. Too much time is spent on skills for careers, forgetting the importance of developing one's character. The problem is that if your focus is only on the external, then life passes in the blink of an eye, and the deepest and most precious part of our being remains undeveloped. We discover a humiliating gap between our actual self and our desired self. Basically, we find ourselves resembling a passing shadow of a bird in flight. There was a well-known American Jewish philanthropist who early in life was known as a fantastic narcissist. You can be sure he never helped a soul. Then suddenly, at the age of 40, he turned his life around, got married, had children, and became a major contributor to Jewish and humanitarian causes. His rabbi, Rabbi Shlomo Riskin, asked what had made him suddenly switch life's direction. What was the trigger? The man said, "One day, when I was skiing, a fierce storm broke out. I was completely isolated, and I thought I might die. I wasn't afraid. I can't explain why not. I didn't bargain with God, but I became consumed by one thought. If I die, who will mourn me? And I realized that there was only one person who would, my mother. And she would have done that even if I died at birth. So I might as well never have lived. I thought further, what would there be to be right on my epitaph? What have I done except have a good time? And so I came to the conclusion that if I lived through this storm, I would direct my energies to some ideal beyond my immediate pleasures. I would try to leave something of enduring value behind me." He took stock and decided to change his story. At that moment, his slumbering soul was stirred, and he was determined to make sure that his life was not to become a passing shadow, or even while alive, it could bring blessings to no one. At the University of Oxford, over the entrance to the Department of Anatomy, the following words are written: "This is the place where death teaches life." Every day is a day about the joy of life, about embracing life with both arms and full heart, and about how to live well with meaning. But it uses death to teach us, to teach life, to spur us, to stir our consciousness, so that we savor each and every small moment of the life that we've been given by Hashem, and use our time as meaningfully as we can. And of course, as we think of dear Sybele Trigoboff, let's start today. Let's take and make Sybele moments of using our life and to think more deeply, more honestly, and more sincerely of what impact are we making. We must remind ourselves over and over again that time moves fast, too fast. So don't gamble on the future. Let's act now, without delay. Let's close that gap between our actual self and our desired self this very moment. And in simple words, let's not live a life like the passing shadow of a bird in flight. But this brings us to a second type of person, one whose life can be compared to the shadow of a wall. The shadow of a wall is certainly more reliable and dependable than the shadow of a bird. At least it is not constantly moving. So at least that's something. But it's still not going to protect you with consistency. Think about this. The wall, it gives a nice block of protection and shade, but only some of the time, during the morning hours, when the sun is on one side, and then in the late afternoon, when the sun goes from the other side. But during midday, when the sun is blaring right over the wall, there is no shadow, just the brutal and blazing sun. This is like the person whose influence is felt only some of the time. He does good for the world early and late. But for most of the productive years of his life, he is concerned with himself and is not involved with helping anybody else. If you enjoy reading memoirs, this idea, this theme will not be alien to us. Many memoirs have lines like, and unfortunately, at this point, I lost focus and spent the next years drinking and gambling. This is because the midday sun was high in the sky, and the person lost track of whatever good work they had been trying to achieve. Let me share with you a story from the Talmud about Eliezer ben Dudai, who was a sinful man all of his life. One day he had a sudden insight into the depth of his moral corruption, and he broke down weeping. Remorse surged so suddenly in him, and fiercely his heart gave way and he died. At that moment, says the Talmud, a heavenly voice called out, Rabbi Eliezer ben Dudai is hereby granted eternal life. The Talmud continues, when the great Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, the redactor of the Mishnah, heard the story, Bacha Rebbe, he cried, and he said, Yesh kaina elamai b'shah achas. A person can acquire the world to come in a single hour. But why did Rabbi Yehuda cry? Was he upset that Eliezer acquired eternity in a single instant? Was he envious? Surely he should have been overjoyed that a person who had sinned so badly every day of his life could in 1 hour change his whole life's destiny. No, my friends, he was not envious. He cried because if Eliezer was able to acquire the world to come in such a brief period of time, just imagine how much Eliezer could have accomplished had he spent his formidable energy in doing good during all the days of his life. You see, canceling the past does not turn it into any kind of record of achievement. It rather leaves it blank, basically a waste of spilt years. It's like a bank account, purged of debt, but now standing at a zero balance, showing what it almost had, merely suggesting what could have been. Yes, Eliezer acquired paradise for the repentance that he did, but imagine what he could have achieved if all of those lost, forsaken decades would have been dedicated to goodness instead of being squandered. Dear Sybele spent decades and decades using every moment to make this world a better place. a legacy that continues on with Baruch Hashem, Tzalanga Yoren, with children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and a community, her immediate community, in the entire world. A Jewish sage once compared life to a postcard. When we first start to write, we use big print and waste valuable space on those cliches. Remember those days you just sent a postcard? What do you write on a postcard when you're on a cruise? How is the weather? How is the food? Here it's very cold. And of course, we have to end by saying, wish you were here. But as we approach the end of the card and realize that we still have not said anything of importance as we originally intended, guess what? We no longer waste our valuable space with those trite and meaningless phrases and questions. Instead, we begin to write carefully in small letters, sticking only to what is truly essential. Now we can remember the 10 important things that we were supposed to say, the ones we pushed to the back of our minds. We try to fit the vital things in at the edges and count each letter to make sure there's enough space. Some of us even remember so much that we wind the increasingly tiny letters around the whole periphery of the card. Remember doing that? Filling in every tiny bit of the white space. So it is with life. We're not careful early on about accomplishing as much as we can. Because we feel, there's so much time left. It's unthinkable even that it might even come to an end. Who thinks about that? We're 10 years old, 15 years old, 19 years old. The world is our proverbial oyster, and nothing the older people tell us will be of any consequences. We have forever, and maybe even longer than that. But as our life passes, as there's less and less time of it left, we realize that our time is precious after all. And we try to abandon the trivial and to begin to squeeze in at the end as many good deeds, as many mitzvahs as we can. Each moment matters. But if we realize the value of time earlier on, gewalt, we can utilize the time we do have for what is truly significant. And so as we remember during the high holidays in the course of our life, we ask God not just to write us into the book of life, but to help us write a life worth reading. We ask God for another year, not merely to live, but to grow, to love, and to give. We ask to realize what's important with time to spare. Today, as we remember dear Sybele Trigoboff, we must remind ourselves to savor every day of life. In fact, not just every day, but every second, every minute of it, to work, to develop the greatness that lies unrealized, the talents that remain imprisoned and unshown to the world, and the kind-heartedness that has remained stunted, in order to grow into a human being, each of us that can become. We must pause to reach deep inside of us and pull out that which is concealed, quelled, to reignite the embers that were once burning. It tells us not to be like a shadow of a bird or the wall, not to be like a person whose influence is only felt for some of the time, whose mark is here now but will be rendered invisibly shortly when the sun changes position. It reminds each of us not to live as a person who brings only an allocated portion of ourselves to their family, to their spouse, to their child, to God, not to hide away the other side by keeping it to ourselves, not to be selfish, narcissistic, and self-serving. It urges us to give, and to give all of ourselves, and to begin early. We are capable of so much more than just the resume virtues alone. In the words of the Medrash, we are capable of magnificent living, just like a majestic fruit tree. Which brings us to the third description of a shadow, the shadow of a fruit tree. So last but by no means least, we come to the shadow as described as a fruit tree. Think, under the lofty branches of the fruit tree, it guaranteed that there is always shade. And this spot offers a safe haven and harbor under everyone who seeks it. So too does a person who, like a glorious tree, is constantly growing and bearing fruit to benefit others and always giving blessings to those who pass by. This is the type of shadow whose qualities we should all strive to emulate. This is the type of shadow whose qualities Sybele Trigoboff emulated all through her life. From the beginning of Jewish history, the trademark of a noble character is a deep concern for the well-being of others, in reaching out to offer care and beneficence, and a striving to put the needs of others first. A beautiful illustration of this is at the beginning of the book of Exodus. It says, Vayigdal Moshe Vayetze. Dr. Kolshevsky is right away looking up in the encyclopedia to make sure that I'm quoting right. And Moses grew up, and he went out to his brothers and saw their suffering. Growing up means expanding outward. It means resembling a tree's branches by extending ourselves both upward, outward, with compassion, sending out our branches as far as we can reach to enhance the lives of others. It would have been perfectly reasonable had Moshe chosen not to notice his brother's struggles, to claim no affiliation with these condemned slaves, to bask in the security and the pleasures of the palace in which he lived so securely. He could have averted his eyes, and no one would have blamed him. But had Moses chosen this path, guess what? God would not have chosen him. History would not have remembered him. He would have been a passing shadow of a bird in flight. The whole development of civilization was radically altered because in one decisive moment, a young man flung off the luxury and the security of Pharaoh's palace and went out to help his suffering brothers. That decision changed the world. That decision, a momentous one, changed him into a fruit tree. From that day to ours, the trademark of Jewish greatness has always been the ability to go out of your way to help someone else. It is to grow kitzeloi shel dekel, like the shadow of a fruit tree, whose protective shade and nurturing fruit blesses us all, always reaching and stretching to cover more people, to bring them into the safe shadow and shade, away from the heat of the sun, from the searing winds and the lashing rain. So two Chelmites, guys from Chelm, so-called philosophers, not especially noted for their sophistication, they were engaged in a very profound discussion. What was their discussion? They were had this deep, meaningful question. Does a person grow from the feet up or from the head down? This is a question that is discussed in Connecticut a lot. Does a person grow from feet up or from the head down? The first one said, from the feet up, of course. Last year, I bought my son a new suit for his bar mitzvah, and at that time, the pants were just the right length. Now, the pants only reach his ankles. That proves that people grow from the feet up. Hester Meiser. Fool, snapped the second philosopher. It's obvious that the people grow from the head down. If you see a group of soldiers marching, all their feet are on the same level. But if you look at their heads, you will see that they are at different heights. He says, this proves that people grow from the head down. So who is correct? You all recognized I'm sure that both philosophers were wrong. Garnished. We grow neither from the bottom up nor from the top down. Genuine growth is from the inside out, from heart to heart, from mine to yours, from yours to others, from the inner to the outer, from the core to the covering, from a seed into a glorious fruit tree. So it is our job to remember our loved ones. It is our obligation, it is our responsibility to remember the people who had an impact on our life. It is our job to remember those people whose life's legacy continues to shine, whose protection, in a certain sense, was like a glorious fruit at all times and even beyond time. But we can do more than just remember them, can't we? We can choose to remember our dear ones, our dear friends and relatives, so their lives will not be like a flighty shadow of a bird. I would often hear the teaching, there are 3 names given to a cemetery in Hebrew. It can be called a Beis HaKvaros, a house of graves. It can be called a Beit Olam, a world home, a Beit Olam, or it can be called a Beis HaChaim. But depending on the person, that's where they go. If a person is, we put the person in the ground and we go home and nothing is changed, means nothing to us, the person sadly goes to a cold grave, Beis HaKvaros. If we stand there and remember how much money they made and how many degrees they had in life and how many times they had, Club Med and early bird specials and all the other things, the person goes to Beit Olam, it goes to a worldly place, a place of materialism. But if a person remembers the good that the person made, the impact on family and friends, an everlasting holiness to this world, the person goes to no cold grave, Beis HaKvaros, or just a world of materialism, but a Beis HaChaim. Chaim, life. Mazar b'chaim, afu b'chaim. The person lives on through an impact, then they are alive in a certain sense as well. So we can choose to remember our dear ones. And the way we choose to remember our dear ones, that's the kind of life they have impacted. So again, we can choose to remember our loved ones so that their lives will not be like a flighty shadow of a bird, nor like a short-lived shadow of a wall, but more in line with the eternal sheltering shadow of the tree. How do we do that for our loved ones? How do we do this as we remember dear Sybele? Guess what? Simple suggestions. When we make Kiddush on Friday night and we have our family around the Shabbat table, our parents and grandparents live on. When those Shabbos candles are brought out and lit every Friday night at the appropriate time, our parents and grandparents live on. When we take who we are seriously and what life is all about, and not try to cram it in when we're older, our parents and grandparents live on. When we celebrate a Jewish holiday in all of its richness and spirit, it's like you are doing today, like all of us are thinking at this point, then our parents and grandparents and our loved ones live on. Because when we celebrate, they celebrate. When our life is permeated with compassion and kindness, when our homes are permeated with the very true sense of Yiddishkeit, then our ancestors, those who we're remembering at all times, they live on kitzei shel dekel, like the shade of a fruit tree. If we choose to live in a certain way, in a certain meaningful way, then even death does not snuff out life, because life continues to provide shade in that nourishing for all those who come after. Kitzele shel dekel, like the shade of a tree, of a fruit tree. A group of kids from Camp Gan Yisrael went on a field trip, and for some reason the kids were drawn to the arcade room. Well, I had no idea why that might be. It is one of the greatest mysteries, isn't it? Like kids going. Anyway, they were all drawn to this arcade. The counselor knew his kids inside and out, and he was determined to keep his eye on one particular camper who was a bit wilder and rowdier than the others, always getting into trouble. As he was watching some of his campers in the arcade, the father of another child went to the register to get change, and a $10 bill slipped out of his pocket onto the floor. One of the campers took notice of this, walked by, and gave the bill a slight and kind of a surreptitious kick, moving it away from the man who had dropped it, and then quietly picked it up and put it into his pocket. The rowdy kid also saw what had happened, and after observing what his fellow camper had done, took $10 from his own pocket and walked by the father at the register. He dropped the $10 bill on the floor and said, "Excuse me, sir, I think you dropped something." He went back to play his video games and didn't say a word to the camper who actually took the money. The counselor was shocked. He called the kid over and told him that he saw everything. "Tell me," he said, "what made you do such a thing?" Remember, this was the rowdy kid. The kid explained, "When I was young, I would go to visit my grandfather a lot. He had a tobacco store, and one day a customer came in, and as he was paying my grandpa at the register, he dropped a bill from his pocket. A kid in the store saw this and quietly picked up the dollar and walked away. My grandfather finished the sale, and as the man turned to leave, he took a dollar from the register, ran to the other side of the counter, put the bill on the floor, and called back to the man, 'Sir, I think you dropped something.' And with a touch of embarrassment, almost in tears, the camper said to the counselor, 'The boy in the tobacco store who picked up the dollar was me.' After the customer left the store, knowing that my grandpa saw what I did, I walked up to him and gave him back the dollar. All he said to me was, 'From you, I expect better.' These words have haunted me for years. My grandfather died less than a year ago, just a few days after my bar mitzvah. I hope that today my grandpa is proud that I lived up to his expectations. His grandfather was living on in the most powerful and extraordinary way because he continued to inspire those who came after. Kitzele shel dekel, like the shadow of a fruit tree. That is how we should live. So, as we remember dear Sybele and extend our best wishes, Hamakim Menachem Eschem B'Soich Shar Av Leitzim Yerushalayim, the traditional blessing, may the Almighty comfort you. To the entire family, Sybele's sister Irene, and children and grandchildren, may Hashem bless you and comfort you amongst the other mourners of Tzion and Yerushalayim. Let us learn to be like Sybele, like that tree, to stay grounded as she was, always connecting deeply to her Jewish roots. Let us also resolute ourselves to connect deeply with our roots. Like the tree, to stand tall. Sybele was a tall lady, firm and broad in the knowledge of our heritage. Remember, like a tree, we can always turn over a new leaf. Let's remember from the tree, cultivate our unique qualities, as indeed Sybele did in so many different ways. And let's learn from the tree. Let's extend ourselves outward as far as that we can reach giving shade to all. As a reminder, I repeat the fact that Sybele Trigoboff designed a beautiful menorah, a unique creation based on the Rambam. The Rebbe wanted our menorahs to particularly reflect the menorah that was used in the temple, which wasn't round, which came out diagonally. The whole idea of a round branched menorah is taken from the walls of Titus in Rome, where they depict the Jewish people being enslaved and brought to Rome, and they're carrying this menorah. The Rebbe explained that has absolutely no bearing on the actual menorah itself, which is still hidden somewhere. They had many menorahs. Remember, the temple itself had many rooms and many areas that had to be light, so they had, in order to distinguish between the mitzvah menorah, which stood in the holy area, that had the diagonal branches, and the rounded ones, which were generally used for lights. Well, Sybele built the menorah in a beautiful way and has been replicated thousands and thousands of times, bringing so much light and hope to the world, especially in the world that we live in today. So let's not be like that turtle, but keep on growing every day, every single day, to make a difference in our world. And so, dear friends, as we've been discussing and reflecting on life, let us remember, the Hebrew word for mother. Sybele was a mother, a grandmother. Hebrew word for mother is ima, like in English, mum. But in Hebrew, many English words come from Hebrew. Hebrew word for mother is ima. And the same word for ima, mother, has the same root of the word emes. Aleph, mem, taf. First two letters of emes is aim, mother. The first two letters of the word in Hebrew for amunah, faith and trust, is amunah, aleph, mem, vav, nun, hey. So interestingly, the same two letters for the word mummy, mum, aim, spells the same word for emes, amunah. And finally, it's the first two letters of the word amen, or amen, aleph, mem, aim, nun. When you lose a Yiddish mama, an Eishes Chayil, we remember dear Sybele. Not only was she a mother, a grandmother, an amazing friend to so many people, an inspiration to so many, but she was also a reflection of amunah, true faith, connection, emes, a person of nobility, a person you could rely on, a truthful person. And ultimately, amen, she was the answer to all of our blessings and our requests. Tein nishmas tzur b'tzarachaim, may her soul be bound up in the bond of living life, and all of us be inspired by Sybele Trigoboff of blessed memory, Tzivya Bas. Let me think now, thinking, dear friends, it's Zelig, Tzivya Bas Zelig of blessed memory. May Hashem bless us to be inspired by her life. May we go on to bring so much hope and light to so many and learn from dear Sybele's example to all of us. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you and all the best.
The views expressed on air are not necessarily those of WHPC, its management, or Nassau Community College. Responsible opposing viewpoints will be considered by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu or by mail at WHPC 1 Education Drive, Garden City, New York 11530. Thanks for listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by Triborough Pharmacy. Hi, I'm Barry Newman, the pharmacist at Triborough Pharmacy, which is a full-service pharmacy offering a full line of prescription drugs and over-the-counter products, Notary Public, and the DMV vision exam. We accept most insurance plans. Located at 3720 Ditmars Boulevard in Astoria, Queens. just blocks from the Ditmars Boulevard train station. Open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. More information is available at 718-777-7033. Ask for Barry or Joe at Triborough.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by Uncle Bacala's Italian Seafood and More, located at 2370 Jericho Turnpike in Garden City Park. Now booking holiday parties, plus Uncle Bacala's will be open on Christmas Eve. Their menu includes Italian specialties like veal ossobuco, chicken milanese, shrimp risotto, and more. More info is online at unclebacala.com.
This show on 90.3 WHPC is brought to you by the Enza Brandy Law Firm, a full-service law firm that works with litigation, personal injury, real estate, trusts, and estates. The Enza Brandy Law Firm is now located at 310 West Hills Road in Huntington Station. If you're looking to buy or sell your home or seek compensation for injuries, you may get more information about the Enza Brandy Law Firm at 631-757-7471 or online at enzabrandylaw.com. That's ENZABRANDI law.com.
Wake up with the Nassau Morning Madhouse, winner in 2023, and now nominated.